Hello again, and welcome back to what I'm calling my journey as a dyslexic. My name is Alden Albino, and my series is on how I'm learning to speak, read, and write French as a dyslexic, and also my thoughts on and feelings on being a dyslexic. Today's video has a very strange name, and I'll explain the name in a second. But today's video is called "What Does an Apple Taste Like to You?" I kind of took that away from a movie that I'd watched years ago. I'm not sure if it had to do with an angel coming to Earth or if it had to do with an alien coming to Earth. But there's this alien and a woman are talking about different things as he is learning how to be a human. And the question was, have you had an apple? And the alien said, no, I don't know what it tastes like. And the woman's shocked says, tastes like? You've never tasted an apple? And the answer was, what does the apple taste like to you? The reason I'm going down this particular path is a good friend of mine, Ian, has been following my videos and brought up a good point of, can you describe to me what dyslexia is? And I'm sure I could. However, with so many different types of dyslexia and so many good places to go and locate them, which I've put in the bottom here, their websites to go to, I thought it would be better for me to describe what I'm going through as a dyslexic, not necessarily the nuts and bolts of dyslexia, because as far as I know and understand, there's so many different kinds. I'm just going to give you some of them right now. One called phonological dyslexia, surface dyslexia, rapid automatic naming dyslexia, double deficit dyslexia, comma dyscalculia dyslexia, and common dysgraphia dyslexia, left-right confusion. So I could get into all of those, but I got that from the Mayo Clinic, who's renowned for research and finding things. Also, a very good explanation was done by somebody called Nishanta. I have his thing down there on what he explained and how the brain works for dyslexics. His heading on that one is "Dyslexics are more intelligent. Here is why." And for me, he motivated me clearly to find and go in more research and made me feel good about who I am as a dyslexic. So let me start off with a bit about who I am and how I've grown up with dyslexia. So I basically wasn't diagnosed early, but I struggled in school and of course felt all the same problems that a lot of people did as dyslexics. I felt embarrassed, ashamed, terrified to go to school. I was originally from Trinidad, and well, back then, let's say they weren't very gentle with students whose handwritings weren't well done or homework was done. I remember an incident, in fact, where my dad, who was a teacher, was driving us to his school, and the car had stopped, and I leaped out of the car, running away from school out of absolute terror of going to school. I remember vividly somebody being beaten because of the lack of handwriting. I have been and always been terrified of school. When we came to Canada, of course, that sort of stuff stopped, but the name calling and the feelings that I had, being told I'm stupid and so on and so forth, were very difficult. The shame of struggling with reading, the shame with struggling with spelling. Though I put in the effort, it just wasn't there. Very difficult for me to deal with as a person. So I struggled with all that. In fact, the list the Mayo Clinic has, I can run down with you, that I personally know that I have. Dyslexia, most people think numbers flip back and forth. My difficulty is difficulty reading. It's not that we cannot read. In my case, I can read. It just takes a long time, including reading aloud. Reading aloud terrifies me beyond belief. I am afraid of making mistakes and being looked at as being stupid. In fact, I was on a particular course with somebody one day, and somebody was struggling with reading, and the person beside me said, "I can't believe people in this day and age can't read," and was laughing at this person, only to now realize that this poor person was probably dyslexic. And meanwhile, at that same thing, I knew I would struggle, so I read ahead, figured out where I would be reading, and tried to read ahead to get it going. Very terrifying for me all the time. very afraid to read out loud. Slow and laborious intensive reading and writing. I can write extremely well. Thank God for my iPad. Thanks to Apple, they created this whole system. System's the wrong word, for the visually impaired, which would, if you highlight it, you can speak and you can dictate, which it was amazing on the iPad, and I've been using it for 10 years, which has helped me pass writing courses and do all kinds of stuff because I can dictate it, listen to it, and go back. Problem spelling. That was one of the reasons why I use that system. I've struggled with spelling my whole life, and no matter what I did, I'm a person who likes to find out how things work. Self-help books. I've tried different ones on spelling, reading, writing. Never stuck. Another sign of avoiding activities that involve reading, obviously. Mispronouncing names or words, or problems retrieving words. I used to call that decoding. If I didn't know the word, if I had to sound it out, I would struggle. But it didn't mean I didn't know the word. It meant I just couldn't pronounce the word when I saw it. Once I heard the word, it's like, oh, this means this, and this is where you use it. And it was very easy for me to put the connections. But I always had problems with doing that. Problems spending unusual long times completing tasks that involve reading or writing. Yes. I spend my time, in fact, last week I had to do something in my French class where I had to write something on the board. My colleagues looked like they did it in half an hour. Between you and me, it took me 3 hours to get it on the board. I came in earlier to ensure it was done. Trouble learning a foreign language. Henceforth, why I started and how I went on this journey is I'm on a French course that is struggling with me. So that's another one. Difficulty memorizing. Well, when you look at some of these videos, especially the ones I have up there, there's a struggle for dyslexics with what's called the working memory, the short-term memory, and the long-term memory. And again, I could go into that in great detail, but some of the other videos that are there can explain them. But for me, moving things from short-term to long-term, from working to short to long, is an absolute struggle. I realized that when I'm on the French course. One of the scenarios that we use is we'll say a phrase, and for ease of this, the phrase, let's say, is broken up into 3 parts. The first part I might catch, the second part I'm working on, but as the second part, if the first part's going, by the time I get to the third part, I might remember the third part, but I definitely don't remember how it started. I can't remember what's in the middle, and it's gone on there. And what I mean by a phrase, so the phrase may contain 3 words here, the middle 3 words here, and the end 3 words, and I could not do that. It was a struggle for me. Short-term memory is, or working memory is extremely horrible from what I understand from dyslexics. But I can't generalize that. I can say for me, it's horrible. So what I struggle with is trying to memorize quickly anything. I seem to get panicked and nervous about it, especially with my past with schools. It becomes very difficult. Words do not move for me. Luckily, they don't spin back and forth, but I think that's part of the reason I never caught it. It was very subtle. As I started to discover, there were perfect, better fonts for dyslexics. I ended up blowing up 3 different fonts, the common ones that they used, and the ones they claim are very good for dyslexics. And what I discovered when I blew it up, funny little thing is these little blue hairs around the letters would wiggle and move back and forth. That explains to me why things in a funny way were shifting. It was so subtle, I never saw it and never caught it. That's what I deal with on when it comes to reading. Hearing, of course, for me, decoding what I'm hearing is a very difficult thing, especially when it comes to French. What I'm hearing, how it's pronounced, how I read it or write it is very complicated. So let's use French, for instance. My method for French is very interesting. Right now what happens is I piece the word together with something. I've learned that for me, I'm extremely visual. Now there's different ways: auditory, tactile, reading, and actually reading, which this says I need to see it. Me, I actually need to turn all my words into pictures. So imagine trying to turn everything into a picture is what I'm struggling with. And what I mean by turning it into a picture is that I could never remember the days of the week, and I've struggled in school, I struggled all through my life, I struggled before the course and during the course. Once I realized that I was very visual in the sense that I had to make a picture, I worked on the days of the week and realized that is how I solidify. And what I mean by difficulty is I would study, and try to remember those phrases that I talked about earlier, and it would take me about 10 to 14 days to get them under my belt. And meanwhile, my colleagues are doing it in what seemed like 10 minutes, what seemed like in an hour, but had control of it definitely by the next day. And it took me 10 to 14 days until I started to discover, as I said, I am very, very visual. Now, what I mean by visual is I have to turn words into pictures. So my process is days of the week. It started with actually Sunday, and in French, Sunday is dimanche. What I had to do for myself is I had to turn the word into a picture. So I literally saw the devil, the big red horns, the tail, the whole 9 yards, fire coming out, walking into a church, and my brain went, what is that? Oh, a devil, demon, walking into church, dimanche, Sunday. I did that with all of the days of the week, and once that was there, I no longer forgot them. I no longer had to go back and relearn it, because anything I did other than that, within 3 days, it was gone. I have been testing it by not trying to re-pull it up, and it just happens immediately. So for me, that's what I mean by visual. I have to be able to turn it into a picture in my mind, but that's only the first step for me. I don't like to make these videos too long, and I'm at the 12-minute mark, so I will then cut this one short here and describe later on to you my full details of how I study and learn French. Anyhow, thank you so very much, and I hope that cleared up not what dyslexia is or explains dyslexia to you, but explains dyslexia how I see things, or in other words, what an apple tastes like to me. Have a good day and take care. Bye-bye.